I got into Space Engineers because it was Minecraft for adults, I guess.
Yes.
It was, I mean, that was the way that I looked at it when I first got into it. It is quite a bit more than that. But uh, when I first got into the game, I was like, oh, I really like the idea of being able to I don't want to just say like engineer in space because that's the name of the game, Space Engineers. But I really liked the idea of being able to build your ship and do all that fine tuning that you can do in Space Engineers with all of the like making sure you balance out the batteries with the thrust that you have and understanding like the weight that you like your dry weight versus your fully loaded weight. And
Totally.
I don't know. I'm a nerd and I got really into the idea of the math behind it and then all the cool builds that you can do. So you had creative freedom to build whatever you wanted to do, but then there was also a framework for it was creativity, it had purpose, I guess,
Ah,
right? Because there if you have creativity that has no restraint, then it can be chaos, right? Or it doesn't feel like it serves a function. But if there are certain criteria or certain, I guess, limitations put on it, right? Like you can't put a thruster and have a block underneath it because it would get destroyed by the thrust. And so you need to be creative with the placement of your thrusters. You can't have your ship have too many cargo containers because if you overload your cargo, then you don't have enough thrust to lift off. And so balancing all of those things while also trying to be creative, that idea to me was something that was really attractive.
well, and we've talked about this before, you and I. Like I think you also sort of you have a, you undersell the engineering aspect of your brain. Like I watch you create stuff, and to you it's just like, well, duh, this goes here, and this it just feels like this common sense thing that you're doing when you build it. And I just sit there and watch and go, I would never have thought to do any of those things, and I'm not smart in the way that in many of the ways that you are smart, but just the way you push things together and put things together just often baffles my mind.
Well,
So
I very much appreciate that. I don't know if it's smarts or just sheer hours in the game.
Probably
The,
both. I feel like you come at any new game that way though. Anytime we even start a new game with you, you just instantly get into the crafting thing, and there's something about the aspects of the behind the scenes rules of how that's created. You can just I think it's one of the things that I enjoy about watching your content is besides the fact that it's entertaining. And there was something I wanted to like circle back on that you said. It's entertaining, but it's also your builds are just not just engineered so well, they're aesthetically pleasing too. It's just a really fun world to be in. I'll never forget the first time on your it was No Suit Survival, your first
Mhm.
series there. So I've been watching your No Suit Survival for so long, and everyone, even if you're not a Space Engineers fan, we should really go watch that. But it was really fun to. There's this one particular base you'd been working on for a while, and we got to hop on, and it felt like I don't know, like going to Disneyland or something. It was like I'd seen it on TV. I was like, it felt like, I don't know, like seeing a celebrity or something. It was like I was like, I'm actually here. I remember when he built that launch pad over there and set up those lights, like those neon lights in this cool way that I never would have thought of. I'm standing in front of that. It was so cool. Like, it was so cool to be there and to be, anyway. So you build a world that is fun to inhabit as an audience member. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a question in there even to say like, how do you do that? I guess is one question, or is there something about how you see it, and maybe you don't even know how that works or why that works. But the other thing I actually wanted to say, if I can remember what the other question was that I had. Oh, rules. The thing you said about setting rules for your. So I was going to ask you. You pull rules. It seems to me like from two places. You've got the rules from the game itself, like you said, like thrust and weight and that kind of stuff, and then you love to make your life particularly difficult
Yeah, yeah.
by setting your. Paul Hindemith is one of my favorite composition teachers, and he used to tell his students when they were stuck with writer's block or songwriter's block or composition block, just keep adding rules until creativity becomes the only option. Like, and I found that with my own students, like if you keep adding rules, eventually for whatever reason, it sparks this, ooh, this is a challenge that I want to really dig into. So how do you come up with your rules? And is it really just to torture yourself, or is there, I don't know, what's the MadMavn algorithm for rule creation, if there's one?
I guess, I mean, there probably is a level of it that is masochism. So I mean, there's part of it that's like, you know, for YouTube, you want to do something that's new and different, and people, if you pitch something that people see as difficult, then they will be intrigued. But I think for me, it was more than that. I wanted to do something that was a little bit more challenging. So specifically with no suit survival, you're in space, but you don't have a spacesuit. And so, and then I also made it difficult with the gravity on that first planet. I don't even know how I did it, by the way. I went galaxy brain for a day, and I just went into the mod that was that planet Helgen, and I found where the gravity was, and I changed it. Wow. And then if you asked me to do that today, I could not do it. I don't even know if the next day I could have done it. But I don't know how that happened. But it worked out that one day. But anyway, so I set the gravity really high as well. And the reason I wanted to do that with Space Engineers was I had already played a ton of it. And that game specifically, kind of like Minecraft. I mean, Minecraft does have the Ender Dragon, so now there is kind of like a objective. But Space Engineers is a sandbox, and so you kind of have to make your own objectives. And I wanted to see what could be done in a, what's a good way to say this? I wanted to see how the builds and the buildings and the ships and the rovers, how everything would look given different constraints.
Oh. It's like, how do you design into that? Like,
yeah,
how do you design into those challenges?
Yeah, so changing the constraints changes the output of the design. So the turtle was in that series, that was like my go-to ship that I like made a bunch of variations of.
I love the turtle.
And I don't know if I talked about this in the actual thing, but the reason I called it the turtle was because it had so much downward thrust because of the 3 times gravity that if it ever flipped over, it was never getting back because it couldn't, like, there was nothing I could do. And so that's why it was called the turtle. But yeah, that's a ship that was designed for that really high gravity and to be able to have cargo and to be able to transport, you know, stuff around my base. And because I didn't have a suit, I needed to stay in the cockpit of a ship. And so I needed these things to be able to get me around and transport me around. And I needed them to be able to weld up my base. And so they had to be versatile. And wow. I just thought the idea of how would instead of having a spacesuit, you have to build a place that is connected by pressurized rooms, which actually was the case of how I ended up playing that. But that was the thought, at least. And then the high gravity is like, how does that affect the ships that you make? And
so it's like it's a form follows function kind of a thing, like, and to see how that would happen. And did it feel risky? Like, I mean, you create that rule, you start a series, you have no idea how it's going to end up. Doesn't it feel like if you get the rules wrong, the series is going to, like, did you think about that?
I don't think I thought about that at the beginning, for sure. I think too much about that now. But I think at the beginning, I definitely didn't think about it in that term. I wanted to try it out, and I was in between jobs, and I just was watching somebody else do Space Engineers videos, and I don't know, I had some editing experience, and so I decided, hey, why not?
That's so cool.
Best case scenario, something happens and I get paid and I can, you know, pursue this. Worst case scenario, I end up playing the game that I was planning on playing today anyway.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. Well, and just the way your brain creates those rules and stuff. Like even the series that I did, it was because we had one of these days you spouted off several different like scenario ideas. And first of all, I couldn't even think of one, and you had like 5 that all sounded intriguing. And then one of them was like, oh, the no scrap thing was what I did, you know, like the idea that you couldn't, or also whatever. What did I didn't remember what I called my series.
It was the grind.
The grind. Well, it's called the grind, but the idea was I couldn't mine for resources.
couldn't mine for resources.
I could only use scrap. Which also was a really fun challenge to have to design around. Anyway, the creative aspect coupled with the designing and engineer aspect of the way you come at things is just really interesting.
I appreciate it.
Thanks. That's cool.
We've talked before on this podcast about the idea of flow and the idea of kind of getting into a game. And one of the key things is balancing skill and ability. And it seems like you're really good at tweaking the not skill and ability, that's the same word.
Challenge and ability.
But balancing challenge and ability.
Yeah.
So you tweak the challenge, and then the ability kind of you change, you grow, like you learn, you figure things out as you go. And I think that's Space Engineers is a particularly fail heavy game, I think. I think just kind of in general, also specifically for me, but like in general, the idea is you try and fail. You try things, you're like, oh, that didn't work. What did I do wrong? And then you do the math, or you tweak something. And
sometimes the things that go wrong are not even, in Eroc's case, it's never been his fault.
No, it really isn't. I think we should celebrate this failure you speak of. I think it's something that we should be excited about.
Well, I was just going to say, with Space Engineers, you have clang that can sometimes kick in because it's a physics-based engine, and so sometimes things just go wildly wrong for no reason.
Which is all that ever happened to me.